This Russell Wilson thing, and let me tell you the latest. I'll peel back the curtain and I'll be candid. I always am, but I'm going to be more candid than usual because I'm in the process of trying to find out the answer to one question. And I posed this question earlier today to someone who usually gets back to me fairly quickly. Now, there's a chance that this person just hasn't noticed the text message. There's a chance this person has better things to do than respond to me. But again, my history and the habit has been question gets answered, question gets answered. Question I posed today that is yet to be answered several hours after the fact is whether or not Russell Wilson has asked for a trade. Silence in response to that question, which intrigues the hell out of me. You know, after you text someone and you're anxious to see what the answer is going to be, you check your phone, you wait, you see if you're getting the three dots, those damn three dots, which are both tantalizing and aggravating. And nothing. I've got nothing. And it's been 5 or 6 hours, Charean. So I'm starting to wonder, has there been a communication behind the scenes that people aren't ready to acknowledge publicly yet that Russell Wilson has made the same kind of request that Deshaun Watson has in Houston?
Well, this spiraled out of control quickly, Mike. We saw the Aaron Rodgers thing immediately after the season got over, and then he kind of clarified a day or two later, and that kind of sort of cleared itself up. It didn't go on and on and on like this one has. And I think this is going to go on for a while because it does very much feel like to me that Russell Wilson has one foot out of the door. And as you pointed out, it's going to be really hard to do a trade right now, but they could do it after June 1, in which case he would be gone. But no matter, this just certainly feels like he is leaving Seattle at some point, whether it's this year or after this year.
And really what they also could do now, because we've seen in recent years the practice of working out the agreement pre-start of the league year. We have a pending deal for almost 2 weeks now between the Rams and the Lions for Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, and some picks flowing from L.A. to Detroit. That becomes official on March 17. But what happens in the interim? Everybody acts like it's a done deal. My guess is Jared Goff's talking to the Lions regularly, or although there are some limits on how much communication there can be in the offseason. But my guess is he's gotten his hands on a playbook if they put one together. And same thing for the Rams. Matthew Stafford probably has the Rams playbook. But that same mentality can apply to a deal that won't be processed until June 2. If the Seahawks are fine with it, if the new team is fine with it, then you do the deal with the understanding that it becomes official on June 2. And what happens after that? Russell Wilson is regarded widely as a member of that new team, even though the deal doesn't get reduced to writing and communicated to the league office until the day after. You would divide the cap charge. It would go from $39 million in dead money hitting the cap this year for the Seahawks down to $13 million this year, $26 million next year. And given that the pandemic's going to do something to the salary cap this year, and we assume it will go down, there's a chance, I guess, that they will get these new deals in place for broadcast rights, and they'll move enough money around to keep it close to 198 or 195 or anything more than 180. But regardless, there's benefit to having that cap charge only $13 million. That's another way to do it. And Russell Wilson can start working out with the receivers, tight ends, running backs from his new team. They work out on their own anyway. Guys from different teams work out together all the time. That's the way it could go down. And then he officially becomes a Seahawk, or not a Seahawk, on June 2. And what about the offseason program? There's no indication there's going to be one. So he's not going to really miss anything there either.
Yeah, and he does have a no-trade clause, Mike, so he, in some sense, is going to get a chance to decide where he goes if he wants to go somewhere, if he has indeed requested a trade. And I know the Seahawks will resist. There's been no indications that the Seahawks are trying to trade him, but teams certainly are calling. I mean, we know that. It's obvious when a guy expresses his unhappiness, as Russell Wilson has, that teams are going to call about his availability. And he started this, Mike. This is not something that's media generated. He started this with his first interview on Dan Patrick. He had a chance to squash it in his interviews with the local media that came after he won Man of the Year. That didn't happen. He did the GQ interview. Tomorrow he does the Ellen Show. So he's had every chance to nip this in the bud and say, no, looking for a trade. I'm coming back to the team, et cetera, et cetera. And he hasn't done that, which totally leads to the speculation that he does want to move on. He's had a chance to end this conversation, and he hasn't done it yet. We'll see what he says tomorrow on The Ellen Show.
The Ellen Show is fascinating because when Russell Wilson does non-sports shows, there's a history there of to the host a specific question about which the host probably wouldn't be aware to ask. And I recall a couple of years ago, before Russell Wilson got his latest contract extension from the Seahawks, he was on Jimmy Fallon. And Fallon asks the question about the possibility of Russell Wilson becoming the highest paid player in NFL history when he gets his new contract. And that was kind of odd. Like, that doesn't seem like something that would bubble up to the top of the stack when it's time to come up with Russell Wilson questions. And Sims has always been very skeptical that someone from Wilson's camp planted that question to Jimmy Fallon, and it just makes you wonder what kind of questions will be planted or suggested or just mentioned for Ellen DeGeneres to ask Russell Wilson along the lines of his future with the Seattle Seahawks. And it's out there broadly enough now that you really don't need to nudge her in any way to get her to ask what's going on here. Are you going to be a Seahawk in 2021? But it could be there's something beyond the obvious that they want to have asked to push this thing to the next level. Because, Charean, the more I think about it, the things that Russell Wilson is unhappy about now, these are things that aren't new. I think these are things he's dealt with, that he's tolerated, and so these things that he didn't have a problem with before, he's got a big problem with now because he wants out, and you need to have reasons for wanting out, or you look like you're being selfish, unreasonable, etc. I think he just wants out. I think that's the bottom line. But I think Brandon Marshall, someone's told him exactly what's going on. Russell Wilson wants out, but he doesn't want to be the villain who instigated his exit from the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, that very well could be, Mike. And who knows, like Chris Sims said on your show this morning, did he want Shane Waldron? Is that who he wanted as offensive coordinator? Because like Deshaun Watson, he said he wanted a say in who the offensive coordinator was. In Watson's case, it was who the head coach was, who the GM was. So did Russell Wilson truly have a say in who the offensive coordinator was? And is he happy with that hire? He hasn't said either way, as far as I know, whether he's happy with Shane Waldron or not, which leads me to believe that maybe he's not happy with that hire at offensive coordinator. So all these things tend to have bubbled up and bubbled over, and Russell Wilson is now making it known that he is definitely not happy in Seattle. I don't know if this is a surprise to the Seahawks or not, but they're having to deal with it now, Mike, and they're going to have to deal with it the entire offseason until something transpires with the trade or whatever happens.
And that becomes the broader question that I'm trying to get to the bottom of, because when Paul Allen died a couple of years ago, his sister Jody inherited the team, and she's owned the team ever since. And I remember early on there was this vague sense, will she sell? What will she do? And she's been even quieter and taken on an even lower profile than her brother Paul did. I have no idea what she wants. I have no idea what she does. I have no idea how involved she is. I get the impression that she, like most owners should do, relies upon her football experts to run the football team. But when you have something like this land on your radar screen and you're the owner of the team, and this is one of the most important players in team history, if not the most important player in franchise history, how involved are you? Do you have a preference? Do you express that preference, or do you just say, I've already been delegating, I'm going to continue to delegate. Pete, whatever you think is best, that's what we'll do. And you have to wonder how much of this public animosity, and it's not really animosity, it's just public rancor, frustration, consternation from Russell Wilson, does that turn off the Seahawks and make them want to make a change? Does it soften them up to deal with the cap situation? Does it make them willing to find another quarterback? Because that's part of the problem. If you let the bird in the hand go, you don't know what you're going to replace him with. Are you going to draft someone? Are you going to sign someone? Are you going to trade for someone? And at this point, all we know about the Seahawks is, according to Dan Patrick, they're not happy with Russell Wilson. Okay, fine, they're not happy with him. What does that mean? What are they going to do? Are they going to tell him, too bad, you're stuck here? Because I think this thing is just going to continue to linger until there's a divorce. I feel like they're on the track. The question is, when does it happen? So do you say we're just going to find a way to hold it together for a year while we plan our options, or are they going to figure out their options now and make their best decision going forward? And that would be seismic if it were to happen. That would be it would be bigger than Tom Brady leaving New England last year, because at least we had months to get our arms and brains around the idea that it was going to happen. This is something just kind of popping up out of nowhere.
We have so many quarterbacks, Mike, that are unhappy, and so many teams that are unhappy with their quarterbacks, as you wrote about today and as you guys discussed yesterday morning, and we started that discussion yesterday. It would be great, I think, for the NFL to see some of these swaps of quarterbacks straight up, a Deshaun Watson for Russell Wilson. And I know that's probably not going to happen, because why would Russell Wilson want to go to Houston? He has a no-trade clause. But something like that, to me, just would be glorious in this league. It would be so much fun. I would love to see that. As it stands now, I do expect Russell Wilson to be back with the Seahawks for one more year, and then I think the divorce is final, unless they win the Super Bowl next year, which right now it doesn't look like that's probably going to happen, but there's a lot of offseason moves yet to be made. But I think that stems a lot from his unhappiness, is the fact that they're 3-5 since their last trip to the Super Bowl and haven't been to the division round. And he doesn't feel like that's his fault. He feels like that's the fault of the people around him that the team has put in place.
Another way this plays out, and we may have discussed it earlier in the week, the idea that Russell will sit tight and see what they do in free agency and see what they do in the draft. And then after the draft is when he could agitate for a trade that would be effective on June 2nd. That's another possible way that this would happen. But I think common sense tells us that if he's saying all of this stuff publicly, he's probably saying something directly or through his agent to the team privately. Is he saying, I'd like a trade? Is he saying the time has come for us to part ways? Is he saying we don't want you to just hang up the phone when these calls come in? And the calls continue to come in, because of course they will. Over the weekend, one of the Super Bowl Sunday splash reports was that the Seahawks had gotten calls on Wilson, but they're absolutely not going to trade. And well, absolutely not has changed over the course of the last 4 days. And we'll see what they get offered. We'll see what it takes. I think if it's going to take 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, Charean, it's going to take 3 first-round picks for Russell Wilson at this point. So,
no question.
It's almost too much, right? I'd rather save some of this for next offseason. Let's not have all this quarterback chaos now. Let's parse it out a little bit. Like when a team scores 50 points in a game, save some of them for next week, please. We may need them. One last point. I did a quick check. I know the Cowboys don't officially retire numbers. They just unofficially set them aside. They have not unofficially set aside number 3, which would be one less hurdle to get Russell Wilson to Dallas. Because I'm telling you, look, all seriousness, this idea of Russell Wilson leaving Seattle has been clanking around for a while now. And the team that I consistently hear when the issue comes up is the Dallas Cowboys. So, heard that again today. Watch the Cowboys. Watch the Cowboys. And I know that would be gigantic because of the whole Dak Prescott angle. But clearly, the solution to the quarterback problem for the Cowboys could be Prescott out, Wilson in. And that would be a huge move if the Cowboys decide to make it.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.